Hey everyone, hey there. Hi, welcome to the Mom Series, The Misunderstanding of Multiplicity. My name is Maria. So, happy February, happy first of the year and everything brand new. If I missed you around New Year's, to say Happy New Year's, Happy February, Happy Monday. So, what I've been doing is talking about um, the book, The Courage to Heal by Alan Blass and Laura Davis. And talking about how that was kind of the it book of the 80s, early 90s. It was the Bible of recovery for trauma. And it utilized storytelling and sharing and support to go in search of repressed trauma to get healed in the now. And it also gave meaning to just about everything that was going wrong with our lives now to find a purpose of why that happened then. So I've been studying a lot of different, and a lot of people uh, got help from the book, and a lot of people found it to absolutely destroy their lives. So, in my search for tools and in my little toolbox of recovery over the years, to get away from talk therapy and having to be in session all the time or go to a counselor all the time, what I found is there's many good books. I've got a ton of them, and I think everybody else has a ton of them too. I'll show you some of my favorites, go over them quick. But I want to talk about a few modes of therapy models that are really hot on the internet, but be careful of. I'm not saying they're bad, but I want to just put a little bit of a warning out there that you might not get. It might get when you're diagnosed with post-traumatic stress or complex post-traumatic stress, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, or DID, or back in the day, MPD, or you have trauma from the past that was prolonged. Maybe it was with your caregivers, maybe it was a turbulent home, just an unstable environment that caused you to be in fear out of your head and never be able to trust anyone really, but yourself. For me, I chose God. Now that's I chose God as my parent. Um, and I think from a very young age, from three. By three, I know I was calling on God. I didn't even know pre-verbally really who God was. I just knew that God was. I just knew. Um, and then I went inside my head um, and did what you do to cope. And we all will do different things, different degrees. That's normal. There's nothing abnormal about doing that. And that's healthy. And it's trying to make sense of your environment, no matter what the trauma is, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a mass trauma and lots of people are going through it with you, like the World Trade Center, or watching the Challenger go up and being so excited for everyone, a first teacher to be up in space and so many people, and you watch them take off and suddenly they've crashed, or whether you're in, um, you know, Fukushima or bombs, wars, whatever it is. What's really the most important thing I found is the phases of trauma. I want to talk about that a little bit. Um, the impact of the trauma during that, we are kind of in shock and numb, and um, shock and numb can look different on different people. Shock might look hysterical on one person, it might look totally shut down on another. So it's important to know that shock doesn't just look like shell shock, like you're like this. It could look like you're hysterical and out of control too. So, like, you've lost your mind because your mind did. It went somewhere else, trying to get it back. Okay. So, trauma can look different on different people. Post trauma, the most important thing is first, there's the impact. If you're able to get help and rescue during that impactful trauma, whether it was sexual abuse, rape, molestation, if you were able to go, run, tell, get out of that situation, share it with a loved one, a teacher, a friend, a clergy, somebody, an adult, anybody, report whatever, that's helpful right there. But if you bypass that for whatever reason, and then you always knew it happened, but you just kind of put it on a back burner in your brain. They call that a repressed memory, but it's really there. Post-traumatic stress is really just remembering and remembering and remembering and not forgetting. So you don't forget it. It's there. It's in front of you all the time. But what do you do with it? Now you're reacting to everything that reminds you of the impact. So our brain, like I said in the last video, it does something wonderful. And I really believe it's divine. I believe we're born from God to be this way, to our body, intelligent, designed divinely by God, is created to survive. In every cell of our body, we are created to continue to thrive, to survive, to adapt, and continue and to heal. We're born with everything we need to heal. Okay. What we do sometimes, I really believe this, what we do is, I've said this for years, is we interrupt the natural healing process because there's pain. There's distress, disruption, and pain. Like, oh my God, I'm getting sick. I don't feel well. I'm going to miss work. I got to go get better so I can go back to work. Okay. And your body is ridding itself of toxins, of locked up emotions, of nasty or whatever it is. Even if it's, you cut yourself, what do? We run it underwater. We put peroxide on it, maybe an antibiotic ointment or whatever, and we bandage it really quick. But we want to pull that bandage off and see, is it healed yet? Is it healed yet? We don't want to be walking around with a Band-Aid. So we keep pulling the scab off in therapy and looking at it often. Often in talk therapy, we're pulling the scab off our wound and going back and looking, oh, what good is that? Well, a lot of people have said the talk therapy and going back to look at the wound over and over again really doesn't help a person move forward, because it doesn't matter why whatever happened to us happened. The hurricane, the tornado, the fire in our house that destroyed everything, the parents getting divorced and different children living in different houses, the blended family that everyone went scattered, the disruption in family life, whatever the heck it was, it doesn't matter because it wasn't our fault. And so the most important thing is to say, it's not my fault. I did what I could do to survive then. So the intermediate area is where people get hung up in post-trauma. There's the impact and hopefully rescue, where you get out of that situation. But if you can't get out of the situation because you live in that situation and it's prolonged, then it might develop into what is called complex post-traumatic stress. And I really tried to find a book without puzzle pieces in it, because I don't know about you guys, but the one thing I really can't stand about MPD DID is all the puzzle pieces, because I think having to fit all the puzzle pieces together is really part of the problem, because you don't have to fit all the puzzle pieces together. Okay, so these are two books I read after Courage to Heal. They came out in 2000, I don't know, 2004, 5 or whatever. This one is the Post-Traumatic Growth Guidebook by Arnell Schwartz, PhD. And this is a workbook, the Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Workbook. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, you were told you had post-traumatic stress disorder, right? What the heck is this complex post-traumatic stress? It's prolonged. It's got a lot of comorbid things with it, like eating disorder, like medicate. Let's say again. For years, it was just post-traumatic stress. There was a group that lobbied hard to get complex post-traumatic stress put into the DSM, and they were told no. It took 3 DSM revisions before they could put it in there, because it just didn't make sense. A lot of what they were saying is it's chronic post-traumatic stress. what happened was they realized people that have a stressor, like a natural disaster, a fire, a war they go to, they actually can get better. They actually can move on. So, or were abused as children, or molested, or kidnapped, or saw something tragic from it. Guess what? You can get past the trauma and grow and move on. So now, what do we do with these people that are stuck in the trauma? And they're overeating, they're undereating, they're bulimic, anorexic, they're laxorexic, they're exorexic, they're shopping addicts, they're gambling addicts, they're sexual addicts, they're depressed, they're anxiety, they're using drugs and alcohol to self-medicate. What do we do with them? They're complex post-traumatic stress. So it's prolonged and they can't get over it. Okay? It's post-traumatic, complex post-traumatic. The therapy is the same. It's the same. Now, for both of these, there's EMDR. And that's using it's a technique that Dr. Francine Shapiro came out with in the 80s. She kind of discovered that, I guess she was just walking through the park and thinking some intrusive thoughts that weren't helpful to her at the time, and she started trying to distract herself. So she started just moving her eyes to the left and the right and looking from one side of the park to the other side, from one side to the other side, from one side to the other side. And she noticed that she got relief. So she did extensive research on it. It became EMDR. Okay. So that became really huge for people with trauma. Then came, I believe her name is Lainey Rosenwig, and she's a marriage counselor therapist, and she developed accelerated resolution therapy, ART. And it's the only one that I think I would well, in 1 to 3 sessions, she can take anybody that has had trauma or any of these things that happen and kind of like erase it from your brain by using the same eye movements back and forth, the rapid, the REM, and waving her hand. So the client is following, like, left, right. Okay, we're going to go over here. What is the trauma? What is the trauma? How do you feel? What are you feeling now? What are you smelling? What are you sensing? Okay. You start to see the client is getting distressed. Maybe their heartbeat, maybe they're sweating, maybe they're hyperventilating a little bit. Okay, we're going to come back over here. Where are you now? Oh, you're in your nice place. Okay, so they establish, oh, you're cold, you're shaking, you're getting nervous over here. We're going to put you comforted, warm blankets, pillows. That helps you. So bring you over here to the trauma, but we're not going to stay there long. To the left, remember the trauma. To the right, relief and rescue. That's pretty much advanced resolution therapy. It's pretty rapid, but it involves replacing the story of that trauma with gestalt therapy, which uses a lot of metaphors. So replacing the thoughts, like what the person knows is true, with something more pleasant. Okay. So it uses recreation of story, word suggestion, relaxation, hypnosis, and then that eye movement, but follow the hand. So it's very similar. Then there's RTT, rapid transformational therapy. And I would say this is something to be careful of. It's really huge in the UK and it has made its way to the States. And although she's a lovely person, Marissa Peers, a counselor for 33 years, discovered that through hypnotherapy, replacing a thought, and inducing a person into a deep state of relaxation and just recreating the entire picture rewires the brain. it's a lot like also there's rapid transformational therapy. That's called RTT, rapid transformational therapy. Rapid resolution therapy, there's RRT, RTT. RRT is another one that's huge and developed by Dr. John Connolly out of Florida, who has a pastoral degree and is an LCSW licensed certified social worker. And you'll find a lot of these people are licensed in basic social work and they've been doing counseling or pastoral counseling, and they're just trying to add tools to their toolbox. And they run into this, oh, it's a rapid way of taking care of addictions or overeating or undereating or overspending or being repulsed by your husband or your wife and not wanting to have sex or whatever the heck it is, you name it. As long as you give that scenario to the therapist, trainer, counselor, they can retell it to you in a relaxed state and then make a tape for you and you listen to it over and over again. Now, I will say this. There's nothing wrong with renewing our minds and thinking of something differently. That's very much a part of talk therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy and didactyl therapy. But for people that have DID and MPD who are being told it's not okay to have an altered reality within your sense, yourself that's helping you to survive. It's not okay to have ego states, which are very much a part of Jungian therapy, where people have ego states and shadow selves that are within them, aspects that they're just not aware of. So it's just kind of wild how it becomes a disorder in one sense, but the very thing that is a disorder is what they're using to cure. So they're using distraction in RTT, rapid transformational therapy, distraction and disassociating and replacing with good thoughts back and forth and recreating the story. Same thing with RRT. RTT, I get these two mixed up. Rapid transformational therapy, Marissa Peers, RTT, it's inducing you into a relaxed state. It's clicking, it's thinking of a word, it's evoking a word, it's setting an intention. With rapid resolution therapy with Dr. John Connolly, same thing, inducing a relaxation, replacing the thought. It's hypnosis. It's recreating thought. But ART with Lainey Rosen, it uses the eye movement to erase the thought and put the new thought in. All of these are very costly except for ART. ART will run you about the same as a therapy session, about $100 to $125 a session, and most insurances will cover a little bit of it. But RTT and RRT, and they're being sold almost like an MLM. You don't have to have any credentials to be trained, and then mentoring to set up your own business, and charging up to $400 a session. The training is up to $6,000 for each one of those. So just beware, buyer beware. Back to post-trauma. So post-trauma, the most important thing I said is not getting hung up in the intermediate, because what happens in that intermediate recovery stage is a person might find a lot of support through their family, and they're going to their therapist, and everybody understands, and they're retelling their story, and everybody's like shocked that this happened to them, or just walking on eggshells around them, or just really, okay, we gotta listen to this person because they're healing. But that gets old. And then people move away and say, okay, you know why? Because you're traumatizing them. Or now you're telling them how to heal their selves. Because a very natural thing to do is after going through therapy and having an aha moment is now to try to be a therapist to everyone and heal the world, right? You got better, so now you're going to tell the world how to get better. You quit smoking, you're going to tell the world how to quit smoking. You quit drinking, you're going to tell the world how to quit drinking. We all do it. It's natural to be empathetic and want people to feel better, that we love in our life, and to just not want them to suffer. And if there was a way to help them, we want to help them. It's also a way of kind of emulating a person that we've begun to learn from, like a professor or a mentor or a therapist that we think highly of and we've grown a little dependent on. So we kind of want their approval too. That happens. I've seen so many YouTube channels and Tumblr blogs and podcasts out there where they just come through therapy and they're like, whoa, let me share with you what I found out. Whoa, okay. Um, and that's great. There's a place for it and a time, but eventually people will disengage. So during that time period, people can fall back into the habits of despair, overeating, undereating, depression, anxiety, worry, fear. It can go back and forth. Um, so the phases of trauma are really important because it's sort of like grief, where we know grief is like anger, resentment, bargaining, accepting, goes back and forth. So, what I found really interesting is in trauma work, using pendulation with a client where you are bringing up the trauma, but only for a short time. And then you're bringing the relief, which is exactly what they're doing with RTT and RRT. That's part of trauma work. Okay, we're not going to go all the way down the rabbit hole today. I know you feel like talking about it. I'm going to follow your lead. You need to talk about it. But I'm going to hang a ladder over that hole there. So, and I'm going to hold my hand out and you're going to come back up. I'll let you go look around, but you're coming back up. And that's really important. So I found these books to be very helpful without going down into the pit for too long. This is a workbook. I would suggest using paper with it. That's what I did. The next book I'd say was probably the best book I've ever read. Could be probably applying a little too much meaning to things because there's so much scientific medical that goes on, but there is the mind-body connection and cell memory is the body keeps score. These two books are by Arnell Schwartz, and this is here by a medical doctor, Bessel van der Kolk. Excellent book, right? If you've been told you have fibromyalgia, you have Crohn's, you have colitis, you have dermatitis, you have gluten intolerance, you have eczema, you have a lot of these things, especially gut things, are run by our brain. So that leads me to my next book, which is my most exciting book, which I would guarantee she's my most favorite new author, is Sharon Copeland. And research with the vagus nerve and polyvagal theory. Now, Deborah Dana, who is a social worker, developed this polyvagal theory. But Sharon Copeland really looks at what the vagus nerve does. And it's a portion of our brain that has all the feelies, all the feel goods and feel bads and emotions. So when a person's in trauma, they bypass the feelings and emotions so that they go past the vagus nerve. And then later the vagus nerve, when it gets heightened, what happens? So assessing the nervous vagus and the healing, power of a healthy brain-gut connection. Ease gastroparesis, trauma, and complex post-traumatic stress. I know. Hi, Tommy, Beth, and everyone from Sidians. I know you used to mention gastroparesis. Lori, I know you had the problem with your stomach too, gastroparesis, diverticulitis, diverticulosis, all those things. A lot of our body has cell memory, but this vagus nerve runs through our nervous pathways, and our brain is talking to our gut all the time. So, without getting too much into it, there are 3 phases of polyvagal theory, and the science supports it. The science supports this. Science supports most of the body keeping score. The science supports that you can heal from any trauma, and that some people get stuck and their behaviors make it worse, and they get stuck in complex. And then my very favorite book, The Myth of Insanity, by Dr. Martha Stout. And this book got ruined in a flood, so I didn't take it out the other day. I wanted to. But the very first chapter of this is called Desensitization, and then it goes into talking about old souls and how it's perfectly natural to do what people do in survival mode, disassociating, and then looking at the myth of what is insanity. Who says it's insane? It might be brilliant, right? So, and just an excellent book. Other book is The Patient Who Cured Their Therapist. And there's another book that goes with this called The Patient Who Cured His Dog, or The Dog Who Cured His Therapist. The Dog Who Cured His Therapist. A lot of times people that go into caretaking and helping other people are empaths. They're very empathetic. They're sponges. And they haven't learned how to kind of shake off that and take care of themselves yet. And they can get burned out and turn to crispy toast. I was one of those people. I think we can be, if we've ever gone through stuff, we're very insightful and in tune to when other people are going through stuff, but sometimes we can be protecting too. And this book here is by Stanley Siegel and Ed Lowe, MSW. And really is just reflections on a client-therapist relationship where the client was able to look into the therapist's situation, and not in a way of like transference or counter transference, but really just step back and see themselves through their therapist's eyes, and then give feedback. And this therapist welcomed feedback all the time, which I think if we're going to go to therapy, we should have someone on the other end that's going to say, how am I doing? How are you feeling with me? Is there other tools or modes or something you've heard about that you would like to try? I know when I was going to therapy, my doctor was very excited to, was like, I just came back from a seminar. I learned how to do EMDR. I'd love to try it with you. I was like, what? What? You did what? And he explained it to me. And I was like, and I have to move my eyes back and forth every time I go over here, over here. And at the time, I had migraine headaches terribly. And I was just like, no, I can't do that. I'd rather just close my eyes and listen. I can't keep going back and forth with my eyes. And some people can't. So we ended up making a deep relaxation tape, and I listened to that with that information in there. So, I mean, I think the most important thing when we're in therapy is just to stay open and honest with our therapist. And if they're not asking for a check-in every now and again, like, hey, am I helping you to meet your goals? Let's reassess your goals. Then you might want to bring that up. And be careful online. There are so many life coaches, life therapists, certified trainers that are selling cures. They're like, all I can think of is the little wagon that came in with all the potions and sold them and hocus pocus. There's a lot of it online. And they will say they've got great awards, and they will show their awards and their certifications and everything. And they do have they are counselors, but they're counselors and therapists who have decided to leave traditional therapy, try a new mode if there's nothing wrong with it. Everyone's always trying to discover their own mode and model of therapy. And going for the quick fix. It's like we don't have to look at what happened. Just, okay, name what you're afraid of. I don't need to know why. And you don't need to go back and know why. And let's just wipe away that fear. Okay, so take a person that goes into therapy and they don't know why they're behaving, and we're told you have to go back and figure out why you're behaving that way. You have to go look at your childhood and figure it out. What well, they look at it for like a half a minute, but then it's like, okay, that's enough. And I've said over and over again, I don't want to be like Lot's wife and turn and look back and turn into a pillar of salt. But you still, I think, need to acknowledge what's real and what really happened. And that's part of a person's life experience and unique to them. And it did shape their personality. It didn't make them a disorder. It may have shaped them in a beautiful way, in a sympathetic, empathetic, compassionate way, and with intuitive skill that maybe somebody else doesn't even have, or insight. So I just think we can't throw that away and like on a racing board say, okay, never mind that. You were in the fire. Oh, and you have burns all over your face, but okay, but the fire's gone. You're not in the fire now. Like, oh, yeah, I know. You see yourself when you look in the mirror, you still have the burns, but it's a reminder you were in the fire, but you're not in the fire now. Okay, so I guess it just depends, different styles that people want to try. For me, I am wholeheartedly searching out the vagus nerve polyvagal theory because it's scientifically based. It's neuroscience. It follows the science. It doesn't go down rabbit holes. It doesn't use metaphors. It doesn't use recreating and storytelling. It just goes to your body's doing this because, and your mind is doing this and it's telling it to. And you're already wired to do that. And it takes the blame and the shame away too. So I just thought I would share some books I'm reading and talk about post-trauma stuff and some stuff that's really hot on the internet right now that people are talking about boards. I saw a board on Reddit where a social worker was like, this RTT and RRT is all over the place and I'm about ready to get certified and I don't know whether I should pay. It's like it's $6,000 more for this and $5,000 for that. And are you really going to be able to use it with your client? If you do, then you got to charge them the money and you got to stay mentored up. It's business. Remember, it's a business. There is no profit if there is no pathology. There is no profit in wellness. Even life coaches are profiting off an ailment and wanting to bring us to wellness. So there is profit again. There is profit in pathology. There is profit in recovery. So I guess just don't get too bogged down in it is what I'm thinking. Okay, that's my video for this week on books I'm suggesting. Client Who Healed His Therapist, The Body Keeps Score, Vagus Nerve Polyvagal Theory Exposed, Sharon Copeland, get all her stuff. She's great. She's got a lot of free downloads. Martha Stout, The Myth of Insanity, fantastic book. If you've been diagnosed with MPD, DID, you want to read this book. There are many books for post-traumatic stress, but I tried to find two that were close to Courage to Heal without all the they still follow a little bit of storytelling, but not as much. Explains the phases of trauma more and getting out of that. Okay, that's all I got. Take care, everyone. I hope you'll get some good reads this winter and stay warm if you're in the cold and stay cool if you're in the hot. Bye-bye.